Can you just elaborate what you were?
No, I'm not saying that's the context of it in itself is not appropriate. Is not.
As a private citizen or as a?
No. I think what I'm saying is that when you talk about connections to Russia, I think the only connection that anyone's made with President Trump is multiple years ago. He hosted a pageant there, and he owns condos around the world, and some of them were sold to some Russians, and I think he sold a house to one several years back. That's his connection. When you talk about the other side, you look at what the Obama administration's connections were. You have a Secretary of State that was selling a fifth of our country's uranium. You have a Clinton Foundation concern with some of the donations they got. You've got the former president, her husband, giving paid speeches, getting a personal call from Vladimir Putin. You've got a stated goal of their of that administration, of Secretary Clinton, to have a reset to, quote, strengthen Russia. So when you compare the two sides in terms of who's actually engaging with Russia, trying to strengthen them, trying to act with them, trying to interact with them, it is night and day between our actions and her actions, and yet no one questioned what she was doing or how she was handling it. And yet,
her pattern of behavior is more suspicious than President Trump.
I think that if you compare the two, it's definitely, when you talk about the stuff that went to their foundation, the concerns that existed around the sale of 1/5 of all the country's uranium, the paid speeches, the personal calls from Vladimir Putin, I think that when you want to look at a connection to Russia, there is a clear one there and much less of one that ever existed on this side. Trey.
Hey, Sean, I just wanted one other thing. So, Sean, in terms of the Nunes chronology, just to clarify, when we're asking questions about process like gates and people, we're not attempting to ascertain the geography of the executive complex. We want to know who knew what when.
I understand that.
So my question is, so I will ask that directly, forget about the technical questions. Mr. Nunes was on the campus. You say we don't know who let him in the gate, so
right.
Apparently it is, and you described, I believe, this is a normal process, right? Tell me if it is normal the way that I'm describing it. Mr. Nunes, the head of an investigatory committee, is allowed to roam around the executive complex, we don't know who let him in, to speak to two deputy-level members of the National Security Council. He is then allowed to see information. He then obtains an appointment, from my understanding of the chronology, with the President of the United States to disgorge that information. He then goes public with that information. Then, 7 or so days later, you say it would be appropriate for everybody to come down here and look at it. Is that a normal process?
Well, I would take issue with a number of the aspects of your chronology. Number one, which you're forgetting, is that initially he is the one that publicly said, well before any of this came to light in terms of the president's March 5th tweet, that he was just looking into this whole matter. He, according to John Roberts, his own reporting, just said that neither of those individuals, as described in your paper's reporting, are accurate. So I would dispute several of the pieces of that. And then as far as him roaming around the White House. No, I understand this, but you jump to a ton of conclusions about, and again, I love watching some of these shows where they jump to conclusions for all. Hold on.
Several times prejudged the investigation is clearing the White House. You've said it twice at the podium today.
Right.
So we're
what
not
I'm saying is
prejudging.
because I'm focused on the substance of this, Glenn. I'm actually, right. And so where's any of the reporting been in your paper about Evelyn Faucus and her revelation that this is what they sought to do? Where has been the reporting in your paper that NBC News just recently covered, that other officials? You seem to be really focused on who showed up where and what door they went in and how it happened. To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunes has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared. And nothing that is inappropriate, and exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
Did the Chief of Staff, who is, in my understanding, an exceptionally attentive gatekeeper to who comes in and out of the Oval Office, did the Chief of Staff know that he was on the campus? Did he approve his?
So remember, you're okay, but you're playing cute there. You're doing two things. One is you're talking about the Oval Office, and the other one is the campus. right? So, no, the chief of staff does not know every single person who's on the 18 acres at any given time. They are people who are appropriately either cleared or waived through the system or are escorted on in some way, shape, or form. No, we don't track every single person who's on the 18 acres. Do we know, generally speaking, who's in the Oval Office? Not all the time, because people can go in. But if there was a meeting, in that case, we all sat back here. He made the announcement, and again, you're leaving out a key part. He actually briefed the press before he told anyone. We all found out, you, me, everyone else, that he was coming down here after he held a press conference with your colleagues to say he was coming down here based on stuff that he'd found that didn't have to do with Russia, that a whistleblower source had given him. Now, the other reporting that I'm hearing today is actually that the sources that you describe in your paper are not accurate. And while I'm not going to comment on either, I think there is an assumption that everything and the chronology that we know over is accurate, which I don't believe from further reporting that it is. And I also believe that some of the comments that have come out publicly in terms of some of the Obama administration are conveniently left out of that discussion. I think that that is interesting, how no one seems to really cover the fact that in a senior Obama administration with high-level clearances talked about the spreading of classified information for political purposes, and no one seems to care.
But just to be clear, Mr. Priebus, Mr. Kushner, Mr. Bannon did not have knowledge of his being on the campus having this interaction with national security staff?
I don't know. Again, you asked two questions and you melded them together. No one knew that he was coming to speak to the president. He announced that on television during a press conference.
Sean,